Good morning, everybody. Let me know if you can hear me. Can you all hear me? Just double checking. Good. Okay, perfect. So today we have a very exciting, another Getting Started series, and we're going to focus on controls. The cool thing about controls is that every application is going to need them. So really, you can't miss, you can't lose for watching this video. We're going to talk about some of the commonly used controls, but I'm also going to actually build a little app with you that kind of demonstrates some of the controls and your ability to change controls even when you build an app from, say, a SharePoint list, which we will do today. So this is going to be a fun webinar, and I'm hoping you'll enjoy it. So as usual, I'm going to start by explaining what PowerApps is. PowerApps is a software as a service for creating and using custom business apps across platforms. Some of you know this, some of you may not. The beauty of PowerApps is that basically it's a three-step process to building an app for your business. You connect to data, you build the app using forms and controls and workflows, but you don't need to know how to write code to build this app. And then once your app is exactly where you need it to be, then you can publish that app directly to your organization without having to go through a store or something like that in order to find out if your app can be approved. Now you decide when your app gets published, and you just publish it your own whenever you're ready. So the point of this is to innovate faster. So what we want to do is to enable the business to do what we call measure, act, and automate. And these three make up what we all need to do as a business. We need to measure what's going on. We need to be able to act on what's happening. And in many cases, we are working to automate things so that we can be more productive. We do less, the software does more for us. So the three applications that fit in here are Power BI, Power Apps, and Flow. Power BI, Power Apps, and Flow are being used by power users. And these are people who know the business really well. And so once they know the business really well, they know exactly what to build into these apps. But they may not know how to write code, so they don't have to. They can just jump in and build these apps using Power BI, Power Apps, and Flow. And this is a wonderful thing because it just frees them to not have to wait on processes that may take longer than they need it to be, okay? Now, even though these are power user tools, that doesn't mean that we don't have an opportunity for developers. What developers can do on what we call the pro dev tier is they can extend these applications that power users can make, include connections to line of business applications with custom APIs or custom connectors. They can connect to Azure functions and use those in the apps. They can create scenarios where higher types of workflow are done, like through logic apps, or maybe they want to use BizTalk. So they can extend these applications beyond what our user can do just by putting together a custom API or custom connector and then providing that power user with a Swagger file that they can upload and easily leverage that additional functionality in the app. So what this gives us is a full scenario of business power, and all of it's lying on top of data. So of course, in every case, we are connecting Power BI, Power Apps, and Flow to some type of data. That data doesn't necessarily have to be Microsoft data, but we definitely can connect to Office 365, Azure, and Dynamics 365 data. And we have connectors and gateways that we can use. The gateways are for on-premise data. So just because your SharePoint is not in SharePoint Online yet, doesn't mean you won't be able to connect to it. You just use a gateway. And then the best or resistance I love the most is the Common Data Service. And the Common Data Service gives us a data schema that we can use across all of our platforms. So we can build one app and it can work across Office 365, Dynamics 365, and Azure, and also on all platforms. It works on iOS, it works on Android, it works on Windows phone, and it works in like even a big screen like a Surface Hub. So a lot of bang for your buck here with Power Apps. That's why it's really a lot of fun to use. It really is a very enabling tool. Now, the building blocks of Power Apps we've talked about before: connectors, galleries, and display or edit forms. These building blocks are kind of what I focus on when we do these webinars. Today, we're going to focus on controls. And basically, like I said in the beginning, if you're building an app, every app has controls in it, because even a gallery is a control. So what you want to do is get familiar with where we discover these controls. And for the most part, you discover them on the insert menu right here. You can see that if I tap on text, I get some text controls. If I tap on the controls menu itself, I get a whole slew of controls. And then there's also media controls that are focused on media. Now, in this deck, which I will give you access to, I link off to our controls reference. And this is a good place to kind of remember, because what it does is it actually goes through every single control Power Apps has, which I definitely won't have time to do today, explains what it does, and then if you click on that control, it will give you more details on how to use it. And then what the documentation team has done is provided related functions and samples on the bottom to help you get started. So I would remember that we do have a lot of reference here. Just enjoy this webinar to try a couple of things out. Okay, starting with the most commonly used controls, which is like the button, which everybody uses a button at one time or another, and the text controls. Basically, the button is just going to help your consumer click on that button and maybe do something. But you have to configure what's called the on-select property of that button so that it knows what it needs to do. Then all of the text buttons, just to explain the difference between them. So the top one, which is called label, you may have noticed a change. It used to be called text, but now it's called label, because it more accurately describes what it really is. It is a label. So the consumer won't be able to change whatever's in that text box because it's only a label. It's not something they can control. However, the text input control is one that allows the consumer of your app, so they're running their app, and now they can type in a text input control. And then there's an HTML text control. The benefit of that one is you can add bolding, you can add ordered lists. Anything that you can do with HTML, you basically can do with your HTML text control, which enables you to kind of, I use it the most actually for buffering up hyperlinks to people. So I can write a little paragraph and include a hyperlink within that paragraph because I've used the HTML text control. And then finally, the pin input control is paying attention to touch screens, whether that be on your phone or your laptop or even a Surface Hub that has touch. And it will actually enable the user to draw using their stylus or their finger. And so these kind of controls, I would say you use all the time. I want to show you something cool about the button that's relatively new. So I'm going to bounce out to, let's bounce out to where I have Power Apps open. Let's see, so I can just go here. And I'm going to go here, I'm going to go to the Power Apps just by browsing to Power Apps from my waffle. And then I'm going to press the new button. Now I have some PMs that are joining me today from the Power Apps team, and they'll be answering your questions in the chat. Don't worry, go ahead and put them in there. Even though you can tell I don't see them, they are watching and they'll be responding. So I'm just going to create an app. And I'm going to choose the phone layout. But, you know, as usual, you can pick either layout that you'd like, or you can start with a template, of course. Okay, it's going to open up a canvas for me. And what I'm going to do is a control, which is a button. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit. And you'll notice that buttons have rounded corners. And one of the things that people have asked me about with this is they don't want rounded corners. They want to have square button. And so in the past, right, you could go to these 4 properties here. Just want to show you these 4 properties here. Radius bottom left. See if I can zoom into this. Radius bottom left, radius bottom right, radius top left, and radius top right. That's what makes the corners rounded. And they're all equally set to 10 right now. So if you wanted this to be a square button, we added a brand new feature. If you look over to the far right here, you now have a brand new properties panel, which I totally love this property panel. It is awesome. It makes it so easy for me to go and find the properties that I need. But if you notice, there's a radius property right here. This radius property shows you what's in all 4 of those properties. Left, so it actually equalizes. Now, if they're different, you will not see that variation. But as long as they're the same, which they are by default, you'll see them all rolled up into that one property. So if I wanted to remove the rounding, I could just set it to 0, and now I have a square button, right? Or I could set it to 30 and make the button maybe more square, right? But I don't have to change all 4 properties, so that's kind of awesome. I don't have to do that anymore, and that applies to many things that have that radius, such as image controls, I think text input controls as well. Now, what I want to say about the button, though, if you want to use a button, you really want to have it do something, and the do something happens in the on select. So on select means, what do I do when you click me? Okay, so let's make up something. Let's go ahead and put a circle on here, for instance. I'm going to put a circle on here. The theme of this is the default theme. If I change the theme, see if I can change the theme to gray. You'll notice that these do pick up the theme, but they pick up the theme until you change them. The moment you set a property on a control, it stops listening to the theme if you change a property that relates to the theme. So, for instance, let's say I want to be able to, I'm going to have a button here, over here on the left, that sets this circle to red, and a button on the right, which I just copied and pasted it, that sets it to blue. So I can change this text just by double clicking, right? I don't even have to go up to the property bar. I can just change the text here. And then I want to use a variable to set the circle to the color that I want. So I'm going to use a variable just called circle color. So I'm going to click on here, go into the on select, and do a little update context variable called circle color. Now, we do have global variables now, but I'm going to use an update because this is just for this screen. And I'm going to make this circle color red. Now, one thing I always forget, and I hope you're not like me, but I always forget my squigglies, right? When you're updating context, you have to put a squiggly in there. So right in after that paren, just see if my mouse is being a little funny today. Right after and before those parens, you need squigglies, and that fixes it, right? But I always forget those. I don't know about you, but I always forget those. And then I'm going to copy, and I'm going to paste that into the on select of my other button, and I'm just going to change the color red to blue. Simple as that. Now, this is not declarative, so I need to refer this circle to that context variable. So I'm going to just let it know. I'm sorry, not its on select. I'm going to go to its fill, because that's what we're trying to change, the fill color. And we're going to replace what's there with the circle color, right? So basically, we're telling it to do whatever the circle color is. Now, by default, the circle color is nothing, so it's black, right? But if I tap my red button, it's red. If I tap my blue button, it's blue, and we can do that all day long. But it's extremely easy to do, right? That's not a problem whatsoever. So just remember a couple of things with this. We got the brand new properties panel over here, and if you scroll down, you got this brand new radius that actually, whatever number you type there, it applies to all 4 sides of your object. That's great. Then when you want to use buttons, remember that you want to use the onSelect property to actually say what you want it to do. Sometimes you just want to navigate, right? So you might add a button to navigate, right? If I add a button to navigate here, I'll just say next screen, something like that. And then I will add one of my fancy new template screens, just like that. So now I have 2 screens. I'm going to go back to screen 1, and I hit my action menu. I don't have to type a navigate function anymore. Now it automatically just does that function for me when I select it from the navigate menu. So no matter how many screens you have to navigate to, they'll be in this list, and you can just select it, and it will type the function for you, and it works wonderfully. So really easy to build buttons. Buttons are not a problem. They're really easy to do. I kind of wondered if I should do them here because everybody kind of knows, but I wanted to talk about them a little bit. Okay, so I want to go on to some of these finger-friendly controls. The checkbox, the radio, the toggle, the slider, and the rating. Now, I call these finger-friendly. PowerApps team didn't name them finger-friendly. That's what Audrie calls them. And the reason is because when you're working on a phone device, right, you want to try to minimize your user's need to type, right? Because we know that typing on a phone device can be challenging for some people. So whenever we can, we want to use controls that they can tap on and accomplish something, or pull on so they can accomplish something. So that's why I call these finger-friendly controls. And sometimes I'll actually replace the controls that I get out of the box with PowerApps with the control that's more finger-friendly if I'm talking about something that I expect my users to do on the phone. So just to talk about what these are, the checkbox is basically a way of saying true or false, right? And it is best, I actually find that this is best used in galleries. And so you can use it in a lot of places, but I really find it fastest to use in galleries. And I don't know, we might have time for me to show you that today, but that's less asked about than the radio. So we're actually going to do a little demo with the radio button. And the radio button allows you to create a scenario where there's choices, but the user can only choose one of those choices. It is similar to a drop-down in that in a drop-down you pick one, but when it comes to finger-friendly, a radio button is much more finger-friendly than a drop-down, especially if the radio button's not small, right? So you want to think about size as well. And then the toggle button is a way of saying yes, no, just by turning a switch on or turning a switch off, which is another really cool way of providing a yes, no, or a true, false scenario. The slider is a way of getting numbers. Now, I often will replace a numeric text input box with a slider because, again, from the phone, it's easier for me to slide than it is for me to type a number in a little box. But the heads up I will give you on the slider is that the slider has a range. So it has a beginning number and an end number. If that range is too high, right, then the slider starts getting really small and it's not finger friendly anymore. So I kind of recommend sliders when you're talking about numbers between 0 and 100, but never higher than 100, although I'm sure you'll find an exception to share with me. And then finally, there's the rating. And usually ratings are used to identify how valuable something is, or how liked something is. So it goes from a 1 to 5 rating. You can use a rating control with any numeric range that you may have in your data source. Okay, so let's play around with the radio button real quick just before we build our app. All right, so I'm just going to go back to that new screen that we made here. And I'm going to do 2 things. I'm going to insert a data source just so I have some data to connect to. So I'm going to do view data sources, and I'm going to add something that I have local, probably on SharePoint, just to make life easy. Let's use one of my SharePoint connections. For some reason, my mouse is being a little slow. Okay, connector. And then usually your recent sites will show up under recent. I'm hoping my most recent one is there. It's not, so I'm going to actually put one in here. So I'm going to back up to one of my sites and just grab the site URL. And then I'm going to paste it in there, which will give me access to all the list. And I think you noticed in one of the videos I published that you can also add your document libraries and such using this blank field down here. But I'm going to add a list of buildings that I have here just because it's the list that I can use. So when I add my radio button, I actually am going to use that data connection to populate the radio button items. So I'm just going to add my radio button right here on the screen, and I'm going to give it a name right here in my new Screen Explorer. I'm going to call it Radio Buildings to make it easy for me to find later on. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit and go into my formula. So let's see if I can, yeah, get that bigger for you as well. So I'm going to change this to buildings because that is what I did. Now, it doesn't know what field, so it picked a field and it threw it in there. I don't want that field. I actually want the title field, only when it's distinct. So I'm going to type distinct and then tell it I want the title field. And now my radio buttons will be the title field. So these buildings are just buildings named after mountains. So you might recognize some of the mountains, right? Now, I could just simply, if I scroll down here, I could just simply drag this until it is tall enough. And if you know your number of items doesn't change, you're done. But if there's a potential in my business scenario where somebody's going to change that list of buildings on SharePoint, and it might get taller. So what I want to do is I want to use relative formatting to set the height of this control. So I'm going to set the height of this control to count the rows of that exact same data source, which is the distinct items in buildings where the title is the distinct factor. I'm going to count those rows. That's the end of that function. And then I'm going to times this by the height of each row that I want to use. And I'm going to use 85. Now, you might think 85 is a lot, and it does give us some extra space on the bottom, which I like. But what's important here is that, again, remember I was talking to you about finger friendly? I want this to be easy. If I have big fingers and these are too close together, then it could be hard for me to press them, right? So I'm just going to put this, I don't know, this is like a little pet peeve of mine. The title, I want it to say what it is. So let's put radio buttons. All right, so let's look at this panel again over here on the right. We have this property panel, this brand new property panel. I want to talk about what you want to think about when you're doing radio buttons in this panel. So let's see if I can get, I'm going to hide this. Well, let me just move this out of my way. Okay, so I'm going to make this a little bigger. And then I'd like you to watch what happens here when I start working in this area here. So I'm going to change the radio button size to 42. Notice that the radio buttons got smaller, and so did the text, okay? They stay in proportion, right? I probably would never change my radio buttons to 42 though, because now if you try that on a phone, and I suggest you do this, whenever you're building apps, especially when you're building mobile apps that are for phone devices, make sure you don't just test in the browser. Also, literally install the player on your phone and test it on the player. There can be a difference in experience, and you want to be able to catch that, right? So in the browser, because Audrey's got this zoomed to 150% of normal, that looks awfully big. But when you try this on a phone, it's not going to be as big. How does it feel when people go to touch it? Do you want to think about that? I also want to point out that you can change the color. You notice that right now Rainier is selected. If you prefer to have a brighter color because you're a more cheerful person, you're welcome to just go ahead and use that panel over there to make the most cheerful colors you can think of, and it'll look like whatever you suggest. So over here in that property panel, as long as you have the radio control selected, you have all of these different options as to, you know, how this is going to look on the screen. You can also change line height. I just want to show you what that feels like. I'm going to change it to, when you type a number, just tab away or click away to see the change. Notice that you didn't really see a change at all, and that's because there's no wrapping in this, so there's only really one line height and related to it. If I wanted to put space between them, I might instead use padding. So let's put a bottom padding 30. I'll just see if I can get this. Oh. All right, so I'll check on that because we should be seeing space when I set padding. So I'll check on that. It could be, we just might have caught a little error. But you want to make sure that your most important thing is that these are big enough. And how do you define big enough? Is you try it on your phone, you get a couple of people's opinion on what is easy for their fingers. Include a diverse type of people, small people, big people, men, women, whatever, so that they can try out and see how your buttons are pressed. But this is super easy. I mean, there's no big thing. Now, if you want to determine what's selected through the automation of the app, you can add a label here. And labels always, anything you insert goes up to the top. So I'm going to pull it down here. And I'm going to zoom in again. And what I'm going to do here is I want this label to show me what's selected above, right? Because I might want to use this in some logic somewhere. So I'm going to just type radio buildings, which is that second one, and then selected, because it's like a drop down in that it has a selected value. And then finally, I want the value. Personally, I have not found the difference between value and result. If anybody watching the questions knows that difference, let us know, because I actually get the same exact value, whether I type value or result. So if any of the PMs want to explain that, that would be cool. So I'm going to just zoom in here, and now if I select Helen's, you'll notice that the label is always going to show me what's selected. That's very helpful when you want to do some logic, your radio button. Okay, so really cool stuff with the ease of connecting it to data, having it automatically give you the radio buttons you need, using relative formatting for your height so that no matter how many items are in there, it grows or it shrinks. I don't recommend you go over 10 items in radio buttons because then you have to do some other relative formatting for what's underneath it and such. And also it just makes it hard for people to choose from too many choices. Try to keep your choices down to a minimum, and it will be easier for people to respond. You can also submit this data to SharePoint based on what they selected using the way we did here, and actually patch that to SharePoint, or we can use it as a default value on a control. So speaking of SharePoint, let's go ahead and make our SharePoint app, okay? So I'm going to just close this because we don't need this. And I'm going to go back to SharePoint, and I'm going to go to one of my lists here. I actually have a list that's called Share It, okay? So with this Share It list, what I want to do is I want to enable people to, and this is like for students. So let's say I have a class of students, and I want them to go investigate what's happening in the world as far as the planet, right? How's the planet doing? I want you to find some interesting stories about what we're doing to protect our planet or hurt our planet or whatever. And then I want you to come here to this app and share this story. Give us the URL for the story. If there's a video on YouTube, share it with us. If there's an audio file, share it with us. And then tell the story that we can all look at it, and maybe, we'll start to rate these stories and such. So all I'm going to do is go into my PowerApps. I've already got one item in there. I suggest when you're making apps from SharePoint that when you build your SharePoint list, you always add at least one item. And the reason is because that one item will help you to format your galleries and format your forms. If you have no data in your SharePoint list, the first thing you're going to have to do is add a new item in your app. So I kind of do this always. Also check your list settings. If you go into the list setting of your list, as of August 15th, 2017, we do not support multi-select columns or rich text fields or multiple select, right? So anytime you're multiple selecting, we won't be able to support that in the app. There's a way around that. I'm going to share you the blog there is a workaround for that, and we will be adding those things later. But you want to check your list to make sure it has all the kinds of fields that are supported. And there's also documentation I can point you to on our community that says what's supported and what isn't as of today. And we'll continue to upgrade that. P.S. You're going to get a lot of surprises coming at you for the SharePoint audience at Ignite, so don't miss Ignite. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to here in Power Apps, and I'm going to create an app. And I'm going to call this app Planet Impacts, right? So this is all about how we're taking care of our planet, right? I'm going to hit create. And I love this part. You guys know I love this part. You've seen me brag about this all the time. I brag about this moment where Power Apps starts doing work for me. Anyone doing work for me is going to get bragged about. So it's building the app, it's making the display screen, it's making a browsing screen, it's making a screen for editing the data, doing that all behind the scenes. Thanks to the developers of the Power App team, we don't have to think about that. It does it for us because of the integration with SharePoint. So as soon as it gets done, and I don't mind this 30-second wait because it usually means I have less work to do. What it's doing would take me at least 30 minutes. So I'm happy to have the time saved. And now I'm going to, as soon as it gets done, it's going to show us the browse screen. So right away, I'm going to toggle over here on this left Explorer tree. I don't know if you notice, you can toggle from the Tree Explorer to the Screen Explorer. You'll notice I have 3 screens. I have a browse screen to browse the items, and it's using a gallery control. I have a detail screen, which will give me the details of the item I have selected, and it has an edit screen. And the edit screen uses an edit form control, and the detail screen uses a display form control. So this actually automatically works, right? If I go here, it gives me the details. If I go here, it allows me to edit. So it automatically works. But we're gonna kick it up a notch, and we're gonna use some controls to do that. So the first thing I'm going to do is zoom in a little bit to this screen and look at the fields it's kind of randomly selected. And I'm going to change these fields to what I want them to be, right? So basically, I would go to data, and I can switch to something that I prefer. Like I only want to show 2, so I can just switch the layout to a 2-field layout. You can see the images give you a good view of what that is going to look like. And then I'm also going to change these what they are. So if I scroll down here, I'm going to zoom out a bit. And if I scroll down here, not that much, I'm going to notice that when I click here, it highlights the field over here that I need. And so I would just highlight that and change it to what I want, which is title. And then this one will highlight the right one over here, and I will change this to publish date. Now, now on second thought, I think I want to add a third one because I want to show you something that I have shown you before about this, is how to add an author. So this is going to be title. When you change the layout, you kind of have to do your layout selections over again. Don't let that stress you. It's because you changed the layout. Now I'm going to put the author's name down here. So author is a complex field. We talked about this at the last webinar, so it's not going to be shown there. However, it doesn't mean I can't get to it. I just have to go into my formula and hit this dot, and I can see all fields, including complex fields such as author. And for those of you that use SharePoint, you may be thrown by author because you're used to created by. Created by author is synonymous. They are the same thing. And just like profile properties in SharePoint, from that created by, or author in this case, I can get a whole bunch of other properties, such as display name, email, and job title. So I'm going to, in this case, just use the display name. And if you keep scrolling down on that dot, let's see if I can get it bigger for you because I'm sure it's too small for you to see. I'm going to click in here, and I'm going to hit dot in. And you'll notice on this right side, I have a little scroll bar. There's a lot I can get from the author, right? So I'm going to choose display name. But this is a complex field, so you would do this in the formula bar. And basically, I'm happy with my gallery now. Now, we're going to go to talk about some controls, and we're going to kind of edit this a bit to make it more interesting. So I'm going to run this app, kind of look at how my gallery looks now. It looks awesome. I love it. And I'm going to go to the next screen. Now, here's where I want to change things. This is the display screen, so everybody will be looking at this screen. How about if we make it possible for them to listen to the audio and watch the video right on this screen? Wouldn't that be nicer, right? That would be a much nicer experience than having to click and go somewhere. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom into this what is this called? A display form. And I'm going to try and get my zooming right. Sorry. And I'm going to click on detail form here so that I make sure I have it selected. And then I'm going to click on this audio one first. We're going to do the audio first, right? Now, I start always by unlocking. And I'm going to show you why. I'm not going to unlock. And I'm going to go and try and add an audio control. So that's in the media property, sorry. I'm going to go and add an audio control. Notice that my audio control doesn't show up anywhere there, because if you look at the breadcrumbs, it's on the screen, it's at the top, but it is in the screen, it is not in that card, right? I need it to be in that card with that control. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to undo, which will remove that audio control, and now I'm going to unlock that card first. Now, if I have the card unlocked and then I add the audio control, watch the breadcrumb now. Now you can see that audio is sitting in the data card, which is in the detail form. And that's exactly where I want it to be. The reason being is I want to take advantage of this item, which we all know and love, to say, what will this audio control play, right? So I'm going to use the URL from this exact property. Now, if I wanted to, I can hide what's there, or I can just lay this on top of it. Again, I have property panels over here to indicate things like, should it automatically start, whether it's visible or not, right? Auto start means as soon as that screen opens, it's going to start playing, right? I can also define whether or not it auto pauses, which is by default on, when I change screens, which I think is even more important. Could you imagine an audio keeps playing after you change screens? That wouldn't be a good experience, right? So if I play this, you probably won't be able to hear it, but it is playing. It is playing a quote from Martin Luther King that says, if there's injustice anywhere, there's injustice everywhere. And we can imagine that's a nice quote for this particular situation, where they're sharing a story about ghost fishing. What happened here is I went looking for something about fishing, because I don't know if you guys noticed, but Chuck's not here today, because Chuck's out fishing and having a good time. So I figured, let me talk about fishing a little bit. But then I found this thing that I had never heard of, actually, where fish and animals in the sea, creatures in the sea, are being caught in nets and other equipment used by fishers. And it's a negative thing. It's a really sad story. There's some good things being done for this, and that's why the video was added. So let's see if we can enable them to play the video live in this display form as well. Again, I'm going to take that same unlock right here, and then I'm going to add the video control. Video control will place itself. It also increases the card size for you a little bit, so I kind of really like that. But very often it's not quite enough when you want to include the label. So I'll make it a little bit bigger, and I'll drop that video, because I don't even want to see the URL, really. I just want to see the video. But again, I'm going to take advantage of the this item property, hit the URL of that video. And now the magic of PowerApps, it just works. Right? So now from my display form, I can listen to the audio and I can also watch the video. Now, in this case, I want to give you guys a challenge towards the end, so hang out for the challenge that's related to this app. I'm going to just scroll down a little bit here. We're going to do a couple more things. Okay, so we're going to leave this as is, and we're going to see how this runs. It seems to be running just fine. We can run our quote from Martin Luther King, and we can play our video. Okay, both of those things are 100% possible. So if I hit the edit button, though, they still can add their URLs for what they want to share. It'll just work fine. There's no need to change this because we want them to add URLs of where this content is, because they went out searching for it, and this is how they share it. They just paste the URL. A couple of things I want to talk about with a form and controls is this. Did you know you can change your control that has been selected by PowerApp just by using the panel on the right? So let me show you what I mean. So this is a story, so it's going to be more than one line in length. I mean, just by definition, it's always going to be more than one line in length. So if I go to the data tab here, I'm going to scroll down to what's selected, and I select ABC here on the right. I hope you guys can see on the right. Just gonna I'll scroll down a little bit. Okay. And choose ABC. Now you have these options of how this control is going to work, right? If I choose edit multi-line text, this can actually set a better expectation because it shows the end user that they can type more than one line. It kind of gives them that psychological evidence of the ability to type more than one line. So I'll do that often because the app from data will sometimes only make that one line long. The other thing I'll make other things more interesting. For instance, I can click on the rating here, and I can click the 1, 2, 3 here on the right, and I can actually change this to stars, right? Now, if I choose view rating, that only allows people to view the rating. Now, if we were doing this, the way SharePoint does this in real life, you'd probably want to do view rating. Although in this demo, I'm going to use edit rating, and I'll show you why. So I'm going to use edit rating, which will enable the person to edit ratings in this form. This will automatically change it to the stars, and it is now directly bound to the SharePoint column called rating, okay? And this is a column that I made in a custom list, okay? So they can now, in this view here, change this rating and save that change. So it was 4, I changed it to 3. If I say accept that, if you go back to my gallery, you'll see, well, I'm sorry, I'll just go to the display form. You'll see that the rating is now 3. I could also go back to SharePoint and show you, but trust me, it is now 3. So you can change your ratings when you use that, but you didn't have to worry about adding the control and binding the control. It's right there. Bam, you're done. I really love that, right? Awesome feature. And then this one I like too. So if I was a teacher, right, and I'm typing 85 in there, I might mean 85%, like a grade, right? So I can go over to my 1, 2, 3 here, and if I scroll down, you'll see that I have several choices for grade. And I'm going to actually choose this little percentage bar, right? And one of the reasons why I chose that percentage bar is because I don't want people changing the grade. I'm the teacher. I want the grade to be 85%, and I really don't want that to be editable on the screen. All right, but it's also nice when you're doing a display form to use this percent. It's a nice looking control. And again, it's bound to SharePoint. It's not like it's its own little animal. It is the same name. It doesn't change the card. The card is still updating from it, and so forth and so on. You also may want to use a slider. Now, I talked about sliders earlier, in that sliders are very finger friendly, right? I just drag this little thing and ooh, yay, and you can imagine if you're on your phone, you don't want to have to hit the keyboard and then type 7, 5, and then get the keyboard to go away and blah, blah, blah. With this, you just drag your finger and set that grade. Now, here's the heads up with this. And again, this will change. So if I change this to 92, I don't have to do any rebinding. It automatically understands the binding. So you can see that the grade is now 92. Very easy 1, 2, 3 type of control change you could make, and very, very finger friendly. Now, I want to give you a couple of heads up though, because two things about the finger friendliness of a slider. And I'm just going to click in here, select this slider, and look at the properties of the slider. So just like the properties of the radio buttons, you have similar properties for the slider, right? You can set this handle size, if you want to 20. But look what happens to my finger friendliness when I do that, right? Now I got to be a little girl with a very small index finger to hit that button. So what you want to remember is you want to keep those buttons proportional to the size of the screen that they'll be working on, right? So let's do, I'm going to do like 70 here. You'll get this really nice big button. And depending on, also who my audience is. I did an app recently for an audience that were, a senior citizen housing thing where, these were all, there might be some sight issues or some accessibility issues. Nice big radio buttons make people happy. When you make your radio button big though, sometimes I like to increase the height of the device as well, just so that the hover doesn't mush away. What I notice is if the height is too small, when you hover, it mushes away. And of course, mush is not an American word, but I made it up and it works. So then if you go down here a little further here, you'll see that you have the options to change a lot of things. You have an option to change the hover fill. So let's see if I can I get that to show up right now? It doesn't have much. So let's try and change something that we can see. All right, so if you notice here on the right side of this, and I hope you can see the very light color change that's occurring here. So on the right side, where there's no numbers involved, it's gray, but on the left side, it's blue. If I wanted to change that to something else, I could, right? And that is when I click there like that and it goes into the function, it's actually saying, this is what it is right now. And if you want to change that, you can change that there. I can also change the active fill of the whole thing. I can change the hover color. I can change the disabled color. So, and we don't need that because we're not disabling it. Let's change the hover color to, well, I not forget. Let's try this one. Oh. So in some cases, you get a little pop-up with colors that you can select from. In other cases, it will point you. Actually, what it's doing when I click there is it's selecting the formula. So I don't have to figure out which formula it is or find it in the property bar. I can go in there and put my colors in. Don't forget also that when you select colors, you don't have to use RGB. You can use red, blue, green. You can use whatever color palette you want. And if you don't change those colors, when you change theme, the theme will also adjust them. So you see if I change, because I didn't change any colors, then selecting the gray and white theme automatically gives it a softer look. Something I sometimes want is a softer, flatter look. So don't forget you have themes there. They're really helpful. You want something bright and exciting, go for something bright and exciting, right? See what bright and exciting looks like. It looks like that. I think that's much more exciting. You can also go for something that is, more maybe dark. And darkness is not is sometimes helpful, when you're dealing with glare outside. So the themes are helpful because you don't have to set all those color options on your controls. The theme basically sets it for you. However, remember that if you change your color option, if you specifically say, I want those stars, see if I can. Oh, okay, that's the background. Sorry, I meant to get stuff. So I'm going to undo. I love undo. It works wonderfully. I'm going to select that control because I didn't have it selected. And I'm going to click on the rating fill, and I'm going to change that to red. Now, no matter how many theme choices I make, that will, oh, okay. So I guess we updated that. So it will, the theme will change everything. So, and that's a good thing. So you don't have to worry about things getting stuck. If you don't use themes though, and you change that and you don't change the theme anymore, it will stay independent. I hope that makes sense. So as long as I don't click themes, this will stay what it is. But once I click themes and change it, now it will go and pick up the new theme. So that's a really helpful way of formatting your controls faster. Take advantage of themes. Take advantage of your property panels. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint here for a minute. And we were just doing this app here, and I wanted to also show you how to record comments, okay, which will give us a chance to look at the media controls, audio and microphone. So I almost forgot. So I'm going to add an, well, actually, let's go play a little bit in the desktop app. I always use the, I'm very often in the web browser, but I do want to kind of show off the desktop app. I'm just going to create a new phone app. Please let me know if you do not see my new blank canvas open. Let me just go peek at the comments here. Everybody can see. Yes, you can see. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my blank canvas here, and I'm going to show you how you can do audio recording. So I am going to insert a microphone here, and I'm going to insert a gallery. So I'm going to insert a blank gallery and a recording. This is a microphone control. And so here we're going to talk about three controls here: the gallery, the microphone, and the audio. All right. So in this microphone, I'm going to give this a name here. Let's just rename it Audrie's mic. Okay. And now what I want this mic to do when it's finished recording. So the property that I'm using here is on stop. What I'm going to do is put the recording into a collection. I'm going to collect, and let's call this Audrie's recording. That's the name of the collection. What I'm going to put into it is Audrie's mic.audio, which is the name of the control and the audio. And that's what will happen when it stops. Then I'm going to use that collection in my gallery, right? So I'm going to set my gallery to the collection Audrie's recording. And I'm going to add a control into this collection, which is an audio control. And you can find this example. I'm sorry, I went to the wrong place. I'm going to media, and I'm going to go to audio. And now I have my audio control, which I can actually rename if I want to. Maybe I want comments. So recorded comments. Enable someone to record a comment on an inspection report or something. So there's no data in here right now, but let's go ahead and play this and record something. So I click on the recording. This is so exciting to have a PowerApps webinar all about controls and user control. How awesome is that? And I'm going to stop it. And now the gallery, you notice that before I did the recording, there was nothing in the gallery. And now there's something in the gallery because it has a recording now. So I can play it again. Because of the audio, you probably don't hear it playing back, but it is playing back. I can control the volume as well. I can control the volume over here. You can see how many seconds over here, and this is your play button. If I record again, testing 1, 2, 3, testing 1, 2, 3, you'll see another. And so you'll be able to play these back as I make them. And so you can use your imagination to kind of figure out what kind of app might I want to create where I'm recording something and then I'm playing it back. And so I'd like to throw that challenge out there to you. Now, the first time I gave a challenge, it was only for the people at the webinar. But this challenge is for anyone who wants to take this challenge. What you want to do is create an app using the microphone and the audio that will be something that maybe your business could use. So be creative. You don't have to use it in your business in real life, but it should be something feasible that your business might appreciate using. And the person who has a really good, we're going to actually all vote on this from my YouTube channel. And we'll all vote on it, and whoever wins the vote basically will get some swag. All right, so that's our challenge for today. The reference for this video is actually in the PowerApps community. This URL is one I suggest you go and look at. You can see all the controls. If you want a special control for me to dive deep into, I would be glad to do that. Give me that feedback. Let me know that you want something special. I'll make sure it's in there. If you don't know my YouTube channel, my YouTube handle, my Twitter handle, it's Audrie PowerApper, and you just have to ping me with a little image of your whatever your app looks like, and then everybody will be able to vote on it. I suggest you use a poll if you can, or I'll make a poll for you to vote, for people to vote on your apps. But just get started trying to make an app that uses the microphone and the audio control in a way that you think your business could benefit from. Now, let me see if there's any quick questions I can answer, because I know we're running out of time. Looks like Greg has been answering questions. So Dave, I want to say to you right away, I should stop sharing, that this is a problem. So if I were to show you what to do, it probably wouldn't work well. It's not a good story. So we're going to have Greg answer that question soon and give you a chance to kind of, yes, it's the same thing for storing camera images in a SharePoint list. Although I will say with the camera images, we actually have a very high priority right now of getting you able to attach images to your SharePoint list, with library coming later. But specifically in relation to the saving of the audio files, that is something that I don't know where it sits right now on the roadmap. And so, Greg, can you speak to that, or I think we had somebody from Controls here too, that might be able to. Spencer, if you could speak to that, that would be great. If not, we'll definitely follow up with you on that point of how do you get that audio? Because right now the audio, the pictures, anything that I've just shown you basically can, in those media controls, sits in the app very well. But what if you want to push it out to a data? Yeah, I get you. So we want to make sure you get that information, and I'll be working with Spencer and Greg to make sure that we have a good story for that, and I'll probably do another webinar on that topic. So any last questions before I close out? If not, yes, you're right, Dave. People who do inspections do want to do this, and we are aware. Don't think that we're not aware. But we are working on it. So a couple of these things we're working on. Thank you, Ben, for saying great job. Thank you all. Thank you, Laura. Hey, Laura Rogers is here, guys. Wow. Good to see you, Laura. Have a great day, and I appreciate your presence, and happy power apping.